Oh, we're live now, guys, so let's get to it.
Coaches. Blow the whistle, ay. Blow the whistle, ay. Blow the whistle, they can't hold a flame against you, ay. Blow the whistle, blow the whistle, blow the whistle, got the game, it ain't no issue, yeah. Blowing the whistle, I had enough with you, the championship, it is gone. Ain't listen to you, I can't give it to you, cause you don't know what I've been on. This is the Coaches Pod.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome back into the Fantasy Coaches Podcast. I am your host, guys, as always, Coach Steve. Unfortunately, I'm without my camera again today here. I'm not on my A game, but I am on my A game for fantasy football. So we have another great episode for you guys tonight, talking waivers for week 6 here. Of course, Coach Tyler is with us tonight. Coach Tyler, what's going on, brother?
What's up, guys? Hopefully y'all had a good week 5. Hopefully y'all don't need any crazy things to happen tonight going into Monday Night Football.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, I had a pretty good week myself, so I'm really excited. But I definitely have a few of my teams that will need some help from tonight. That's for sure. But that's okay. Hopefully you guys listen to we didn't have a podcast this week. We apologize about that. If you were looking for a Thursday podcast or Start and Sit podcast, we had some issues on scheduling and things like that, so we were not able to get that out this past week. But I promise you that will not happen again this season, no matter what. We will make sure we have a Start and Sit show for you guys every Thursday, Friday at least, every week the rest of the season here. So that is my bad. I've been doing this for almost 350 episodes, as you can see here, and I think that's the first time we've ever not had a podcast get at least recorded somewhere. So that's okay, though. It's not a big deal. But we're going to keep on moving forward and give you guys the best fantasy advice we can possibly give you guys. And it all starts here in week 6 with waiver wire pickups. So before we get into the waiver wire talk, we do have some injuries to mention here from the weekend here. A couple ones that definitely stay true to Coach Tyler here. Nico Collins, hamstring injury. God actually just recently switched from day-to-day to week. So we'll talk about that in a second. Devon A-Chain with a concussion. He's on a bye, so he probably should most likely be fine. Aaron Jones, hip injury. Again, he is also on a bye, so we don't know if that's going to be something that will linger into week 7, but we'll get more on that later on. Aaron Rodgers, low ankle sprain. Definitely looked scary at the time. I was watching that play when he had gotten hit. I thought his season was over. I was telling my friends that are Jets fans that, oh, there you go, Aaron Rodgers out again for the year. But obviously, he played right back in the game, and again, low ankle sprain. And Sam Darnold, he wasn't officially listed, but he definitely looked a little different. And when I was watching that London game from the second half, he did not look like the same thrower. I know they were up a bit, but he did not look the same in that second half. So that could be cause for concern as we go through the week here. So, Coach Tyler, obviously Nico Collins is a big thing. So, if you want to talk about that.
Yeah, no, Nico Collins definitely hits close to home. Luckily, the Texans were able to still pull out the win. But you hate to see the switch. Obviously, he scores on that long, I think it was 62-yard touchdown bomb from CJ Stroud, and then almost immediately goes back into the locker room to go get tested, and they, sit him for the rest of the game. And soft tissue injuries, they're always unpredictable. You can't really go in and say, it's going to be a hard and fast 2-week recovery. It could linger a ton, which is terrible. But we also had an immediate after the game, they said day to day. And then, like you alluded to this afternoon, D'Amico Ryans came out and said that that's changed from day to day to week. And that's not an ideal situation for Nico Collins owners. He's, I think, still number 1 in receiving yards in the NFL as of right now. I think he ranks as the number 2 overall wide receiver. So you're losing a big piece in this for what's projected to be week to week. So I would assume hopefully coming back week 8 against the Colts at the earliest. If they're going week to week, I'm going to give at least 2 weeks on that. But it's not a great situation just because of how unpredictable it is.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's definitely a bit of a concern that they made the switch from day to day to week. Kind of gives me the implementation that Nico Collins probably going to miss week 6, unfortunately. Again, things could change by the end of the week. Hopefully he does play. Obviously, a lot of people need Nico Collins. I need Nico Collins. But there seems to be a little bit more of that concern moving forward. So, but don't worry, there will be players to pick up for week 6 here, and we'll talk about in a few minutes here. So yeah, in terms of injuries, again, most of the guys that got injured are on a bye. The quarterbacks, hopefully that isn't something that's going to linger. Hopefully it's something you can kind of deal with for the rest of for week 6. So, but Nico Collins is definitely the one to take away from this week. Hopefully he doesn't miss time, but we've seen a lot of star players miss at least 1 week so far this season, and it continues to grow, unfortunately, in fantasy football. So, all right, we have no keeper cut this week, guys. We're going to go right into our waiver wire talk this week. So we're going to start with the quarterbacks, the breakdown overview of all the quarterbacks here, and I'm going to give again this. I guess these are my lists technically when I'm talking about this, but some top options under 40% this week. Daniel Jones plays the Bengals this week here. Andy Dalton has the Atlanta Falcons. Joe Flacco, if Anthony Richardson continues to miss some more time, he looked great so far in two games, and he plays the Titans this week here, coming off a bye. And there also has been some rumors of a potential switch in New England here that Drake may get his first start in week 6 here. His matchup this coming week here is against the Texans. So Coach Child's probably excited about that for his Texans, but Drake May is going to, it probably wouldn't matter either way, but Drake May be getting the start here. So in terms of quarterbacks, Coach Child, there might be one that's not on my list here that you like better, but is there someone for week 6 that you like at quarterback to pick up?
Yeah, no, I definitely, if Flacco is the starter this week, I like him. He just brings a whole new element to that Colts offense that works extremely well. And it's a Colts offense that was able to put together some points and, actually be semi-effective even without Jonathan Taylor, right? They were running with 2 backup running backs this week. And Joe Flacco still went out there and put up 359 and 3, which usually doesn't happen when you're losing your star running back. So I like Joe Flacco if he's the starter. As long as he's the starter, I'm perfectly okay starting him. Andy Dalton and Daniel Jones both intrigue me. Obviously, Dalton had a lower than expected game this past week against a tough Chicago secondary, but he goes Atlanta and Washington over the next couple weeks. And he still has looked great. Obviously, this past week wasn't fantastic, and he's not going to be the QB1 in fantasy for you at all, but he's going to be, a lower end quarterback 1. And I love getting the production from that. And then we've got Daniel Jones. If Malik Nabers is healthy, I love Daniel Jones. If Malik Nabers is not healthy, I don't really want to touch him, right? We've seen a little bit of the rushing come back for him, especially with, Singletary out, no Saquon in that backfield anymore. Obviously, someone has to effectively run the ball. But if he has Malik Nabers, he's got a downfield target that he's going to try and hit, 15 times a game. And if he can connect on a few of those, he's going to have a pretty good fantasy week. It's been semi up and down, but put up QB 11 numbers this week missing Malik Nabers. And so I'm not upset about that at all if I'm grabbing him off the waivers, especially if I'm missing a quarterback right now or just need someone to sit in as a backup. Steve, I think you're muted if you're trying to talk.
I was definitely muted. I apologize about that. If you're looking for a quarterback play, you're just upset with the quarterbacks you've been kind of rotating through. There's going to be some quarterbacks on bye this week. Fortunately, the quarterbacks on bye aren't that great. I believe Sam Darnold, the Dolphins, Matthew Stafford, and I can't think of the last one offhand. But again, that's not a great quarterback core. If you're rostering those quarterbacks, you're not really starting them for the most part anyway. But again, Daniel Jones, I like the situation. Cincinnati's defense has been terrible. In the last 3 weeks, they've allowed over 800 passing yards and 8 passing touchdowns. It's just not looking good in that defense there. And again, this is a game where it could be high scoring, where the Bengals are able to score, but they're going to have to play. This is going to be a shootout, and allowing Daniel Jones to actually produce for us in fantasy, which he did actually surprisingly well this past week here without his top target. So for me, Daniel Jones got to be the top guy, but there's other guys there. They might be able to fill in if needed. So in those higher percentages, Aaron Rodgers, it didn't look pretty this past week, but he did end up throwing up a decent outing despite throwing 3 touchdowns. Could be for an option for you. And in Dynasty, again, Gardner Minshew got benched once again. Aiden O'Connell got the put in there. He may be out there on your dynasty rosters. People might be considering dropping him. So he may be available for you to go pick up. There's not a lot of dynasty. I mean, if Mason Rudolph is still out there, another guy I would just kind of hold on to. I know Will Levis is supposed to be the starter this week, but he is dealing with an injury still, but he still might be dealing with his own problems in terms of trust from the coaching staff here. So, a guy like Mason Rudolph might get more chances for you in dynasty if you really need a quarterback in Superflex leagues. So, all right, over to running back. So we do have a comment in the chat here. Oh, right. Yes, great comment in the chat here. Trade question here. Do I trade Jerome Ford, Isaiah Pacheco for J.K. Dobbins and Jonathan Brooks, 0.5 PPR leagues? Thoughts?
Ooh. Yeah, I think I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I'm kind of on the same page. I mean,
especially if Brooks comes out and is what he's supposed to be, even with how good. I mean, Hubbard has looked fantastic. So if Brooks comes out and looks anywhere near healthy, I think that you're getting a good deal on that, especially with Chubb coming back somewhat soon, at least in the next 2 weeks, because that's when his practice window opened. And Pacheco just being out for another, I think, 6 weeks on the timing.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. I'm good with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm on the same page. I mean, Ford, Nick Chubb might be coming back at some point. I don't know how much of a workload that's going to change. Pacheco, he's out for another 5 weeks at least, and it could be longer. I mean, you don't know exactly what the time frame will be back, and are they going to give him the rock right away? I don't think they would. Why would they do that? If Kareem Hunt is producing enough for the Chiefs, why would you rush Isaiah Pacheco back? It's better to have him for that playoff run when you really need it in the cold weather down the stretch. J.K. Dobbins, I think he's got this backfield locked up unless he gets injured. That's the only thing for me that I can see Dobbins falling apart unless he gets injured. And Brooks, I do think there's going to be a split coming out of the gate. I think there will be a split early on. Eventually, though, I think Jonathan Brooks will take this in the back half of the second season. So on the second half of the season. So, I mean, you're looking at week 10, 11, 12, 13. I think you're looking in that range where he's going to finally show off, where maybe it might be, the next 3 weeks. If he does get activated this week, next 3 or 4 weeks, it might be kind of, a limit to his production on the field. But again, second half of the season, it really will take effect with Jonathan Brooks. I think you're going to get the more long-term outlook for your season compared to just maybe this coming week or so. So, all right. Another question in the chat. Hey guys, I need your opinion on my trade. I traded Garrett Wilson for Deontay Johnson. I am about to be 2-3, and I really wanted a consistent white receiver.
Yeah, I think that's a good trade. Obviously, we've kind of talked every week. We just keep waiting on the Jets to get better, and they somehow seem to be getting worse. So I'm sorry, Jets fans. I don't know how you're going through that, but yeah, I like the deal. It doesn't look like Bryce Young is going to be back anytime soon. Andy Dalton's been leading this team. It wasn't, again, this past week wasn't great, but since he's taken the reins, he's looked great leading them. So I like Deontay Johnson there for sure.
I'm still a little concerned. I get the trade, but I feel like I would be looking to sell high in a different direction here. Like I would look for it towards someone. I mean, he made the trade, so it is what it is here. I mean, Deontay Johnson's a fine wide receiver, but I don't think he is a wide receiver one. Like I think Garrett Wilson's still at the upside. I know it has been a struggle so far this season here, and the rumors of Deontay Adams going there. You like if Devontae Adams happens to go to the Jets, like this is the trade you're going to get for Garrett Wilson for Deontay Johnson. Like people are going to probably consider them very similar at that point. I felt like you sold as in Deontay Adams is already a Jet. That's the way I kind of see it. Again, you're getting a consistent guy. Hopefully Deontay Johnson kind of, again, he had a bad week this week, but hopefully Andy Dalton can continue to play and keep feeding him the rock there. And he is the only target there. So I understand the move for this trade here. Again, I probably would have held on to Garrett Wilson personally, but I get it. I do get it. I get why you had to make that move, but I mean, if I'm getting the trade, it's like a B-. That's how I kind of see it. We have a couple more questions in the chat here. Drop Judy for Braylon Allen if I have Breece Hall.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. Jerry Judy's a fine wide receiver 3-4. Braylon Allen has the handcuff upside, and God forbid the Jets want to make a different move and maybe give Braylon Allen more work on the ground, because that Jets run offense has been just atrocious this year. And Breece Hall really hasn't ran well. He's got most of his fantasy production in the receiving game, unfortunately. So Braylon Allen might be seeing maybe more workload, or if not, he is a top tier handcuff. More questions. I also traded Shaheed for Travis Etienne. I'm kind of thin at running back, especially with Kerryon Williams on bye next week.
I like that trade. Obviously, Etienne was not great this past week. We've got Tank Bigsby at the top there. But I mean, he's still running as a running back too, and you got him for Shaheed. Playing the positional game. I'm guessing you had more of an excess at receiver if you're trading Shaheed off. But I like it. I like Shaheed's production, but he's still very boom bust to me. So we'll see what happens tonight. But I like that. I like moving Shaheed, especially for even just the name value of Etienne.
Yeah, no, I'm also with it too. I think Shaheed is very inconsistent, boomer bust, wide receiver 3-4. And Etienne has kind of, seen his production kind of drop in the running game, but Doug Peterson said that he's still their top starter. And, I think you could do much worse on the trade for Shaheed. So, I mean, I think it's a great trade to get a guy who I think can still bounce back and be the RB1 for this team here, whether or not Tank Bigsby, who we're talking about a little bit, is going to see potentially more workload. I think there's still an avenue where Etienne ends up still doing very well. And again, if you're thin on running back, I think that's a perfect trade there, because I don't think you're getting much higher in terms of upside right now for Shaheed, especially if he has a bad game tonight. And I would definitely make that trade before tonight's game, just in case. I mean, you're taking a risk either way, but I think if he has a bad game, the owner might not want to do the trade. More questions. I love the questions in the chat here. What do you guys think of the split's going to be for the Giants? Well, let's talk about that in a second when we get to the waiver wire talk here, because obviously Jerome Tracy is the guy that we're going to talk about here in a second. So we'll get back to that question in just a moment. And then, is Wicks a stash or is he droppable? And this is a question that someone asked me before today, actually. So how do you feel about this, Coach Tyler?
I honestly, I don't believe a ton in Wicks. Anytime we talk about the Packers, we talk about how many mouths there are to feed. And Dontavian Wicks is not the guy that's going to make it out of that. Obviously we had the big week 4. I know that he was a big waiver wire pickup for a lot of people. And then he went out and put up 2 receptions for 20 yards. So that's why you don't always believe the boom games. I am someone that thinks that he's droppable. Obviously, if receivers are getting injured, then I am possibly okay with stashing him.
He does have a ton of wide receivers, so.
Yeah. So I'm good dropping Wicks, especially because you have, like you said, you're going to possibly trade Judy. And then you've got Dell right there, who's going to get an increased role with Nico Collins out for right now. But it looks like Jaden Reed and really Tucker Kraft are the top 2 receiving options there. So you're, banking on the possible 3rd receiving option if you take out a Josh Jacobs out of the backfield. So I'm good dropping him.
I think it depends on your team makeup. If you're thin at wide receiver, I wouldn't just drop Wicks. I'd hold on to him. I think there could still be value there. It will greatly depend if Christian Watson and, again, a suspended, apparently, Romeo Doubs is playing in week 6. I'd probably hold him through the week and then see what happens. And if, one of those 2 guys plays, maybe then drop Wicks a little bit. But he did still have 7 targets in this game, whether or not it was a great game. He had a bad game, obviously, but he still had 7 targets in this game. So I could see dropping him in the right situation, but I think I'd rather stash him, hold on to him at the moment for that time frame. So, and then one more question here. By the way, this was not the same question. I apologize.
Those are 2 different.
This was the Shaheed thing. I apologize. So you have plenty of wide receivers, so you're good.
Trade Shaheed then. I'm good with that.
Trade Shaheed, yes.
But yes, still Wicks is droppable, even if that's not your wide receiver room today.
Right, yeah. So another quick start question for this coming week here. Do I flex Roma Dunze, Darnell Mooney, or Tank Dell this week?
Let me pull up the matchups for this week.
Atlanta plays Carolina. The Bears play in London against the Jaguars, and Tank Dell
I think that was against the Patriots, which I don't want to be a homer and say Tank Dell just for the fact of him being a Texan, but Christian Gonzalez is most likely going to be locked up and shadowing Stephon Diggs. And I think Dell has a lot of potential to come out and really dominate target share with his best friend CJ Stroud. Mooney is having a great season for Darnell Mooney standards, and really for fantasy as a whole.
That's who I would be. That's who I would be choosing as Mooney.
Yeah.
I think Mooney gives you the most consistency there. I mean, Dell and Dunze might have some upside. Dell might have a lot of upside if Nico is going to miss, but I still think Mooney for me is the right answer.
Yeah, I'm between. I just think either that isn't Odunze, I feel confident putting into my lineup.
That's fair. That's fair. All right, let's get back to the waiver talk here. If you guys have questions, again, please feel free to throw them in the chat. We love it. All right. So wide receiver talk this week, guys. Here, some top options here. Starting off the top, obviously Tank Bigsby, coming off of a fantastic game here. We know Travis Etienne's shoulder injury is something, but again, I mentioned it, wanting to trade for Travis Etienne, but right at the moment, Tank Dell is someone that needs to be picked up and needs to be put on your bench to see if that changes. It could absolutely change where it could favor more Tank Bigsby and maybe not Travis Etienne, but he needs to be picked up right now. He deserves to be on rosters right now. Tyrone Tracy Jr. I'm sorry. A big week for him against a relatively decent Seattle run defense here, over 100 yards in this game here. We don't know what the status is on Devin Singletary yet. Needs to be picked up this coming week here against the Bengals. Ty Chandler, again, it's kind of tough to pick him up unless you're like more of a contender right now because Aaron Jones is out, but he could be seeing a starting role in week 7. Roshan Johnson has been getting plenty of work, and especially around the red zone, which is big. 2 rushing touchdowns this past week here. And Jalen Wright, we don't know what's going on in that Miami situation here. Devon A-Chain was out with a concussion, but probably will be fine. But they say sometimes, when rookies come off of bye weeks, they end up getting more opportunities, and Jalen Wright's kind of shown some flash the last few weeks. So definitely worth taking and picking up right now. So, Coach Tyler, who's your biggest running back pickup this week?
Yeah, my biggest is going to have to be Tracy. Obviously with Singletary out, that is great because he's going to get the lion's share. But Devin Singletary hadn't been, outstanding for the Giants. He hadn't been, a bad player in any sense, but he hadn't been great. And I think that the Giants are starting to figure out what their offense is going to be. And I think that Tracy, especially going off against, like you said, a fairly decent defense, averaging 7 yards a carry on 18 carries. You cannot be a running back coach, an offensive coordinator, and not look at that and get excited for what you could do. Just the explosiveness, the ability to bounce it outside and get upfield. So I like Tracy the most. Tank Bigsby, I have never known what to do with him. Everyone buys in on him, and then he goes and does nothing, and then everyone gets rid of him, and then he goes and puts up the RB 1 week. So Tracy's my number 1 out of these. I'd honestly put Roshan at my number 2, just holding down that goal line work for the Bears as Williams matures, as that offense starts to get moving along. That's obviously more opportunity for Roshan to get out there and fall into the end zone, and better weeks for you. So I go Tracy and Roshan here, and then I think I put Tank at the 3rd option for me.
That's fair. Again, with the question about the Tracy split, I think Tracy's earned more work. I mean, it's been really like a 60-30 split throughout the first 4 weeks before this past week here. So we could look at maybe a little bit closer with like a 45-55. I don't think Devin Singletary has done anything particularly wrong to lose his starting job at the moment. But Tracy has definitely earned more playing time in this offense here. But again, this team might stick to the veteran here. So it's something to consider. But Tracy has upside, and he definitely needs to be rostered right now to see how the next week goes, because he could be starting in week 7 and 6. I mean, week 6. And because Devin Singletary is still out. So he needs to be picked up now, because should not wait till Thursday, Friday, because someone's going to pick him up before that. Someone did mention about Travis Etienne. Is he a good buy low and whatnot, with involving the whole Tank Bigsby thing here? I think he is a good buy low still, because we don't know what's going on with this backfield here. It's very clear that Travis Etienne has the receiving work. Tank Bigsby has barely seen any targets. I think he's maybe seen 1 target through 5 games this year, while Travis Etienne is still seeing a heavy target workload. So I don't expect that to go away. It might just hurt his carries. But if as long as he has the receptions, I'm kind of okay still buying low into Travis Etienne as an RB2 at least. And again, someone like, Parak said he was buying him. That's fine because he's a fine RB2 that will have PPR upside still. But the rushing game might be kind of more of a split role than we thought coming into week 1. Some other options consider Braylon Allen, Tyler Algier, Dal Agumbawale, Tyler Algier twice apparently, Justice Hill, and Blake Corum finally got some work in that offense there. All potential options you kind of could go after. In dynasty leagues, Amir Abdullah had a decent outing this past week here. Jeremy McNichols had a really good week here, surprisingly again, but that's probably due to Brian Robinson's limitation in the offense this past week here. Tyler Goodson had some good moments in the game. Dar is probably on there in dynasty leagues if you're looking for another a PPR running back, and Myles Gaskin. It's potential that he could see some work if Aaron Jones is out for a while and it's him and Ty Chandler in the offense. So what do we think of the Broncos defense rest of the season, or should I just stream? The Chargers are also on waivers. What do you think? So would you prefer the Broncos right now, rest of the season, or should you go out and maybe grab like a Chargers defense who I think are playing the Raiders this week? Maybe they're playing the Chargers here. I'll find out in a second.
Yeah. Look at the Broncos defense because they did obviously play.
They play each other. So
yeah.
But the Broncos have the Chargers, the Saints, the Panthers the next 3 weeks.
Honestly,
I don't know about the rest of the season.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm buying into it. I
don't like holding running back. I mean, defenses rest of the season. That's how I feel. It kind of depends on the situation.
Yeah, unless it's an elite option. I don't think the Broncos are elite. Obviously, looked great against Tampa Bay, and then they played 2 honestly really poor offenses in the Jets and the Raiders.
And the Steelers, technically. I mean.
Yeah, and they didn't have a bad week against Seattle too. So, they've had a good start to the season. They will face,
Baltimore, Kansas City, Atlanta.
Yeah. It goes into the, rest of season part of it. It gets a little uglier. But, yeah, honestly, I'd be okay streaming, kind of playing matchup on that. Because if you're making playoffs and you're looking for them to be a formidable part of that, you have the Colts who aren't great, you have the Chargers who aren't great, and you have the Bengals who aren't great. And so I think that could honestly be a good defense to have at that point. But at the same time, I feel like there's going to be better matchups that you could play into for rest of season.
Yeah. I always play defense I always play defense weekly. I don't think of it as much rest of season as always. But the next 3 weeks, Broncos defense is the one you should probably have and continue to roster. And then, as they get to Baltimore in week 9, look around and see if there's a different situation, or come back on here and talk to us again, and we'll see how we reevaluate that defense come week 9. So, all right, moving over to wide receivers here now. We got a lot of things going on here in wide receivers this week. Running backs are the better top of the option, but the wide receivers a little bit more depth wise. There's a lot more options you could go after this week. Top options that are under that 40% mark. Josh Downs still for some reason under that 40%. Again, he had a solid week this week. Continues to be a need to be picked up. Jalen Tolbert had a really solid week with Brandon Cooks on IR. Should be someone to consider picking up. Dallas needs that second option at wide receiver. Alan Lazard continues to see some decent work as a flex option. It's time to pick up Quentin Johnston potentially again and see if maybe, his involvement early on in the season wasn't a fluke, and see if it is something still. DeMario Douglas, has seen 2 solid weeks and 2 weeks solid there in the last 3 weeks. So he could be a potential option for you. Where do you stand as your top wide receiver option this week, Coach Tyler?
As long as Flacco is under center, I'm going to keep Josh Downs as the number 1 here. But Jalen Tolbert, he honestly looked really good in the Sunday Night Football game last night. Obviously, has the touchdown in the last 30 seconds to bolster the week, take him up to a wide receiver 1 for the week. But even before that, he was, I think, 6 for 85 on 9 targets, and then has that last one at the end. May have been 6 for 80-ish. But still, a 10-target game going out there. He's honestly getting more looks and more work than Brandon Cooks got as the number 2. And they go against Detroit, then they have a bye week, and then they have San Francisco. And so those are defenses that can guard CeeDee Lamb, and they're going to do their best to, because those are teams that need wins and very easily could beat the Cowboys. And so I think they're going to focus on CeeDee Lamb, and that opens the door up for Tolbert a lot.
That's fair. I like that. Yeah. Some other options, again, Jalen Polk. Yeah. Miami got so lucky with that Jalen Polk not touchdown. I'll take it, though, every week. I think that was personally a touchdown. That's how I see it, but I'll take it as a Dolphins fan that they didn't score. Jalen Polk, just because Drake May could be starting soon, it could help out the ball out more. Michael Wilson has his up and downs. He had a great week this week. He could have more during the season. Jordan Whittington, I know he's on bye this week, but I know there's rumors that Cooper Kupp might be back after the bye week on week 7. But if not, Whittington is playing more and more snaps, and he looked really good this past week here. Those higher options, if they're still out there on waivers, the Darnell Mooney's, the Keon Coleman's, the Jacoby Myers, all worth picking up probably over most of these guys besides Downs, maybe Tolbert. And in Dynasty, Jalen Coker, he had a decent outing, 4 catches for, I think it was like 56 yards or something like that offhand. Can't remember, but, someone has to step up there. I thought it was Xavier Leggett, and he didn't do that since his one breakout game in week 3. So someone needs to step up in that Carolina offense. Sterling Shepard, if, Jalen McMillan is continuing to be out, could be solid in the slot. Little Jordan Humphrey in Dynasty. Kayshon Boutte is getting some more work in this Patriots offense. He continues to kind of see some work. And Malik Heath, again, he had more targets than everyone picking up Bo Melton this past week here on the Packers wide receivers. And again, I don't think you want to pick up a Packers wide receiver right now anyway, but those are some options in Dynasty if you play in Dynasty leagues, because a lot of those obviously other guys will not probably be there. So another question in the chat, wide receiver base. I'm loving it. Perfect timing for this. How do you guys feel about Waddle? Rest of the season is my wide receiver 2 with Tua back, or would you start Deontay over him even if Tua is back?
I'm going to start Deontay until I see Tua is back and healthy. Obviously we're going to be waiting a couple weeks for that, but I want to see Tua. I remember when he came back from, that little string of concussions that he had the first go around when people were having these conversations about him. He didn't look 100% back when he immediately returned. And so I want to see at least a game or two before I put Waddle in over Johnson, especially if Darnold is still under quarterback, or not Darnold, Dalton is still under quarterback with Carolina. But I feel comfortable with Waddle if Tua comes back and he's still Tua. He just had a little headache for a couple weeks.
Yeah. Right now it's Deontay Johnson over Waddle. If Tua comes back and this offense does look like it's back in sync, Waddle definitely will jump Deontay Johnson, and if that's the case here. But it will depend on how this offense looks when Tua is back at the starting quarterback job. It really makes me feel like Tua will be back, the way that Miami continues to just not address this quarterback situation and expecting Snoop Huntley to be the main guy here. But rest of the season, if he's your rest of season wide receiver 2, not great until Tua comes back. But if Deontay Johnson's there, he's fine wide receiver 2 for sure. So. And then last but not least, the tight ends. It's a terrible week for tight ends if you're looking for a tight end. But there's some options there. Tyler Conklin, he's got 23 targets in the last 3 weeks here. Cade Otton continues. He plays 100% of the snaps each and every single week for the Bucs. He gets his opportunities here and there. It's not always great. Kobe Parkinson had a really solid week this past week here in PPR leagues here. So there's an option for him. Mike Gesicki kind of had a slight bounce back week. Not great still, but a little bit better than the week prior. Evan Ingram is supposed to be coming back, so Brenton Strange might not be worth having right now. He may not be worth a pickup until after we find out about Evan Ingram. But Evan Ingram is supposedly playing in week 6. And then just quickly before I let Coach Tyler go, Zach Ertz is out there. He's higher percentage. He's still worth picking up. And then other options are the Saints tight end. They have a good matchup again this week here. So. But Coach Tyler, who's your best tight end pickup here? Because again, it's really tough to say.
Yeah, I'm going to keep going Conklin. He's just getting the target share, and especially with Rodgers now hampered by an injury, there were worries about being able to push off with that Achilles, and he hadn't looked great. And Conklin has just been a consistent guy that he's able to check it down to and throw it to, and especially if Rodgers misses any time with that ankle sprain, Tyrod Taylor is going to target the tight end. He's probably going to, over target Garrett Wilson too. But I like Conklin just for the fact that he's at least getting the targets. I think that's the biggest thing when we're looking at tight ends this season is the ones that get the targets are the ones that are consistently doing good. Obviously, there's a couple boom weeks, a couple long touchdowns by some more athletic or fluky tight ends. But for the most part, if the tight ends have the target share, then they have the best opportunity to go out and give you the points that you need. And I think Conklin could easily be that guy.
Yeah, no, I agree there for sure. That's really it. Tight ends, unfortunately, not a great week. Quarterbacks, again, not really great week. Quarterbacks or tight ends, unfortunately. Running backs, very top heavy. Some potential impactful players. Wide receivers, there's some depth, and there might be some guys worth eventually starting for sure. Josh Allen's definitely a guy you want to start weekly right now. So, but yeah, that is going to do it for us tonight, guys. Unless you have any final questions, please throw them in the chat here. No problem. We can do that real quick before we get going. Can you rate my Superflex team? I have Mahomes, A-Rich, Breece Hall, Kerryon Williams, Jefferson, Waddle, Deontay, and Ferguson. How would you rate that team?
I'll give it a B. Yeah. Obviously, Richardson he hadn't been what we wanted him to be in the fantasy community. Mahomes has struggled a little bit in terms of fantasy production, and obviously he just destroyed his receiver's knee, so that doesn't help. And Breece and Kyron are great options. Breece obviously hasn't looked outstanding just because the Jets are as a whole terrible. But your receivers are great, and Ferguson keeps getting worked in with the Cowboys, and so I give it a B. I would really, maybe try and move Breece and improve both running back and quarterback if you could. But
Breece might be a hard sell right now, unfortunately.
Yeah, name value.
Yeah, it's a solid team. I think Coach Styles right. B is a solid grade to give that right now. So probably before the season we probably would have said A+, but probably right now it's a solid B. So, that is going to wrap up our show tonight, guys. We thank you all for listening in as always. Coach Tyler, is anything you want to say before I close this down?
Yeah, go check out Dynasty Nerds. Coach Steve does a great weekly article that you should definitely check out because he puts in a lot of work for it. But go check out the Dynasty Nerds. Use code COACH. Me and Coach Steve both right over there. That's actually how we met to get hooked up, started doing this. But you have access to the Dynasty GM, access to the Dynasty film room. If you're someone like me, you just go in there and watch a whole bunch of Ashton Genty and have a good time. But yeah, go check out Dynasty Nerds, and best of luck if y'all need some Monday Night Miracles.
Absolutely. And we thank you guys all for tuning in to the Fantasy Coaches. If you're listening live on our YouTube channel, I always recommend it because it's always a great show and it's always a great visual thing. And you can ask your questions right on the spot if you have fantasy questions. And of course, if you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, we appreciate you listening to us as well. Please give us a rate and review if you're on there as well. And we thank you guys all for listening in tonight. Tune in until next time. We will be back. I will be at least back on Thursday giving out start and sit advice. So if you have some more advice come Thursday, tune in on Thursday. It's already linked in our live schedule here. So we thank you guys all for listening. Tune in until next time, everyone, and have a good one.
Back to back is not far-fetched. We got a couple of Clark Kents. I've been feeling super duper. How the heck they know the future? Come with me, don't be a loser. Grass is green like